Good day, everybody, and welcome to Old Talk. I have a very special guest for us today. His name is Jacques-Claude Escalante. He's a conservative writer and the founder of the From Endureship to Entrepreneurship, The Rise of East Indian Peasantry, and What's on My Mind. He has done some essays on politics, economics, and race. His goal is to promote a greater understanding of economics in a country that has always promoted socialist policies. He has a fascination with the 20th century communism and is an avid reader of all things Thomas Sowell. Welcome to the show, Joclo.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate this opportunity to get my thoughts out there and share some of my work with a wider audience.
Nice, nice. So of late, we've been seeing this situation with tutor where they don't want to teach the children and them. I really don't understand what they're complaining about. They say they want more money, but it seems to me like all the time, all of these trade unions, that's all they just do.
Well, I mean, everybody at the end of the day want more money. But the question is that no one ever seems to be concerned with answering is, well, where we going to get this money from? And once you
Yeah.
ask that question, then all of a sudden it becomes a topic of, oh, my working conditions, my work-life balance. It doesn't matter at the end of the day where you're going to get the money from. And that's the question none of these trade unions could ever answer.
Well, the thing is, everybody say, yeah, the money come from the government, but nobody does ask, well, where the government does get the money?
Yep.
It doesn't the money come from the taxpayer?
Yeah, I mean, and you'll also hear public servants say, well, I pay my taxes. And I always say, no, public servants really pay taxes. They just pay back the money that they borrow from somebody because it is taxpayers' money that pay public servant salaries. And then when you pay your taxes as a public servant, you just giving it back.
Yeah, it's like you're giving money back to yourself. It don't really make no sense.
I don't think they see that way because I think the fundamental flaw here with the trade union movement is that they don't understand that we just have to be tied to productivity. And once a company isn't making money, there's no profits there. How is anyone going to get paid? And the majority of these state enterprises don't turn a profit at the end of the year. They record high losses.
Yeah, we see that well with Petrochin, and they owing the government how many billions of dollars, yet they was living life nice.
Mm-hmm. You see it
Uh,
with car, you see it with the port, you see it with so many state enterprises. And then you have state enterprises that you have to wonder, well, I always use the Ministry of Social Development as one of them. You have a ministry, the sole function of this ministry is to take money and give it to people who don't have money. Yet you have a staff. So where the money coming from to pay the staff?
oh, gone boy. If it had one waste of time ministry, is that one. All right, so today's topic is more or less tutor and what's going on with them. So, who is tutor? The Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Union or Association, or whatever it means. What is
Well,
their function?
well, from my knowledge of tutor, there was a point when they tried to unionize the teaching service, maybe 50, 60 years ago, however long ago. And they were like a collection of teachers unions that were very small and they had no impact really across the country. So what they decided to do was come together and form one main governing body for all teachers to join under, and that was the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. And in my opinion, it was the worst decision that could have ever been made in education because it was from that moment teaching went from being a calling to a job, and teachers went from being educators to civil servants.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one because, going to a public school, secondary school, primary school, it don't matter. You realize it really have a difference between the teachers who want you to succeed and the teachers who just there for a paycheck, you understand?
Yep.
And when it is, you have essentially these schools, because I remember when I was growing up, you had private schools, you had private secondary school, all them prestige school. You had to pay to go there. So why it is these schools that you was once you had to pay for the tuition went now towards the government?
Right. Well, I went to a private primary school. So my idea of what school was different from what the average public school child would have been because to me I went to a private school where classes were small, teachers put in the extra work. even the curriculum was advanced. We did things outside of the SCA curriculum. We didn't waste time on what I like to call non-academic mush. We didn't waste time sticking pictures of presidents, the national award winners in our books. We didn't waste time sticking pictures of carnival mass winners and all this stuff in our copy books. We got to the root of education in basic math, English. We used to do what we call reasoning, and those involve a lot of things like Sudoku puzzles, things to get the brain working, And when I got to secondary school, it was like because I went public secondary school after, right? One of
Mm-hmm.
the one of the best in the countries, supposedly, right? And when I got there, I saw the difference. I was like, what the hell is happening here? I saw children my fellow students who lacked that foundation in basic arithmetic and English, yet here they were in one of the nation's top prestige schools. I saw children struggle to read. And of course, above all, I saw the teachers who just simply weren't dedicated to their jobs. When I went to, private school, our teachers, they were there with us after school, during school, on a lunchtime, they would help us. What I saw in secondary school was teachers leaving. If the last class of the day was 10 o'clock, they go on by 10. You can't get them,
Mm-hmm.
you can't get them after 2 unless it's lessons which they're charging for. And that was just an eye opener to me.
Yeah, yeah. So you saw a big difference when you came from private to public.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
I think is that these private school realize, A, we had to organize our own pension, and if not enough people coming in the school, then we can't get paid. So why don't we join the government, become also government-sponsored schools, and make sure that our pay is secure? That's what I feel it was really
Well,
about.
I mean, one of the worst things could have happened to was the Concordat because the denominational board surrendered 80% of their power to the government. But it was,
Hmm.
as you said, it was for the money.
Yeah, everybody want to eat our food. They had to
It
make
was the
sure
state
to secure
funding.
the future.
It was the state funding, but so many of these denominational schools, despite the state funding, still asking for building and maintenance fees. They're having all these fundraisers. Education has just really and truly become a money institution, which there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I think the goal is to make money in life, but when it comes at the expense of the children themselves, that's where I have a problem with it. And that's what you're seeing happening with tutors. That's what you're seeing happening with teachers. The whole education system is like we've reached a point in education where it has become a for-profit business, and there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, people have to get paid and money have to make. But it's all coming at the expense of students now. And you have a situation where tutor and the teachers, they're seeking their interests with their higher salaries. And then you have ministry seeking their interest with their illusions of government performance, the refurbishing, the laptops, all these expenditures. And the question always, well, who's seeking the interest of the children themselves? That's where we reach the point where we're hearing what tutor has to say. We're hearing what the ministry has to say. What do the children have to say? No one tells us.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's our next big topic in and of itself is the fact that you have a model of education where you have a bunch of children who's supposed to be outside and running around, especially for boys. And they're just there in front of a teacher, usually a woman, because most teachers are women. They like that nurturing role. And
Right.
you end up with a class that's more geared towards girls and boys because when girls play, they're more likely to be sitting down talking, and boys want to run around all haphazard. So the education system, I think, has failed boys, and a lot of people have been saying that for some time now.
Well, I mean, that's we could go talk about 2 hours for that, but they, a lot of children, this is my personal belief here, but boys are very hyperactive by nature. But I think a lot of children are just bored with the school system. I think a lot of children not aren't doing well in school because they're just bored of school. And imagine going to school, like it must be a nightmare to go to school and your project to take home as a primary school student. This is a primary school project they give children every year. Is to go home and cut pictures out of the newspaper of national award recipients and stick that in our copybook. And who's really doing that is the parents. So I think children are just bored of school. And my personal belief is, especially secondary school level, if you cut out all the crap that children have to learn, the unnecessary fluff, You could get thrown out of secondary school by the age of 15. There is no reason why by age 15 a child can't at least write maths and English for CXC. But he has to wait till 17, 16, some cases 18.
Yeah, especially since they changed the whole system with the secondary entrance exam where everybody get in a school. But you have a lot of children who in standard 4 and standard 5 can't read and write, and you're still sending them
Mhm.
to secondary school as like a grinding
But
factory just producing.
whereas automatic promotion, nobody wants to demote anymore. Nobody, because all those things require teacher time. It requires time on the part of the teacher. I'm gonna have to teach this student for another year. I'm gonna have to work extra hard with this student for another year. I'm gonna have to take them on the side and sit down with them and work with them. It's extra effort on the teacher. So the easiest thing to do is just to send everybody up and make it a next teacher problem.
Yeah, it sounds so. All right, so we're gonna try and get back on topic now. We
Yeah,
went on
yeah.
a little tangent. So,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of a trade union? Because tutor is a trade union, and when I look at tutor and the next big trade union, which is OWTU, I see the same thing. You have people who are employed, and all the trade union is says, "Hey, we want more money." The trade union, in my knowledge, my understanding of what a trade union is supposed to be, is that they're supposed to look out for the worker, make sure that the worker is well trained and is in receiving fair salary. If the worker loses their job because the company has a contract or people have to lay off, that they will help support the worker and help the worker find another job. But to me, is only the last point, which is to bargain for more money, is what these trade unions do. They don't do the first three most important things. They only go straight to, hey, we want more money.
Well, I mean, on paper, that's what a trade union is supposed to do. A trade union bargains in the collective interests of its members. That's on paper. What do the facts actually show? What do the reality show? What does the reality actually show? Because the goal of a trade union is to increase its bargaining power. It means that membership isn't tied to worker competency. That's the first thing. Membership isn't tied to skills, it's not tied to trades, it's not tied to any of that. It doesn't matter how good of a worker you are. To join a trade union, you just have to pay your union dues. So that's the first problem we have with trade unions is that you have workers in there who just aren't good workers, but they need to be there to make up numbers. So what you find happening with trade unions now is that when they do bargain in the quote unquote interests of their members, you find that the mediocre ones are the ones that are going to get promoted, whereas the ones who actually work hard, they're the ones being left out. So trade union membership isn't something anybody should aspire to, especially if you're a hard worker. The other issue with trade unions is that there's a reason why you will often find them in the civil service because no private employer is willing to put up with somebody who just simply doesn't understand basic economics and has zero economic literacy. Again, it goes back to the central question of where is the money going to come from? Pay is tied to labor productivity, and the majority of unionized employees work for the state, and the state makes no money. State enterprises run at astronomical losses, and when you see with the teachers union especially, they have to remember that these schools are not only they are receiving state funding. It means that any money to refurbish these buildings has to come out of the treasury. The students are not paying tuition fees like a private school would. The government has to perform a balancing act between refurbishing schools, providing resources, and also paying salaries. And the question to teachers is, are they willing to sacrifice the refurbishment for their salaries? Because
Absolutely not.
as I've said on numerous occasions, if they got their salary increase, Monday's protest would have been that they're staying home because of poor working conditions. And that's what trade unions do. Trade unions have become this group that they find any excuse to not work. And I mean, trade unions can make up things on the spot. I saw a teacher posted that they have to teach 40 children in a class, and the rule is 15 to 1. And I said, where did that rule come from? That's some made up bogus trade union rule to just find more reasons to not work, to make it sound like they have a bigger grievance than they really have. I went to private school, we had 40 children in one class at one point. You know what we did? We simply relocated the classes. We moved. I think I was in standard three. We moved standard three to where standard one was because standard one was smaller. What do teachers want? They want the government to demolish the school to make the classes smaller. What do they really want at this point? But that is what trade unions. So on paper, trade unions seek the interests of their members. In reality, they inconvenience everyone.
Yeah, I had to agree with that one. And that brings us to another thing you have to consider is teachers have it nice. Yes, you
Uh,
have to have a lot of patience, but when you compare a teacher work to a normal work, they work
Absolutely.
in less hours, they have more vacation, the salary is guaranteed by the government, and they're still complaining. So,
Well, you see, that's another thing trade unions do. They live in an artificial world and they don't, they're just blinded to reality. Now, for the most part, the average public servant is a career long public servant. Very few people actually leave the public service to go to the private sector.
yeah,
Number one,
everybody say, you gotta get a government work, you gotta get a
yeah.
government work, not
So,
understanding the economics.
yeah, so not many people have. When I hear teachers say we're being paid 2014 salaries, we're not being paid enough, and I ask myself, what do you all know about salaries elsewhere? You had this now. This all came about because of a report between the CPO and Twitter, neither of which have an understanding of rates, wage rates across the country. Because I'm sure, actually, I know for a fact, private school teachers make a lot less than government school teachers. So neither of them live in the real world to have an understanding of any of these things. All they know is that they simply want more money. But at the end of the day, teachers don't know any public service, and just public servants in general don't know how nice they have it. Where else in a job, Karen could go and you could leave half an hour? I
That
could
don't
tell you,
happen.
I could tell you, I work in the private sector, and I could tell you, Karen go and we just put out our flashlights and work as normal. The computers go down and we can't do the bills. We do handwritten bills, and then when the power comes back up, we do the bill electronically the next day. Where else? But this is what unions do. Unions say, "Hey, Karen, go, you have to go home."
AC gone in
But
the office earlier. We had a
you know
ride
what I
out.
mean? Yeah, I once had to work with a AC technician over me fixing the AC. Right? These are the this is what we put up. I shouldn't say put up with, but these are just the realities of the private sector because we have to make money to get paid, and
And
civil
then,
servants don't have to do it. And there are many perks to being a teacher. You get a vacation every. We get in the private sector, we get 2 weeks vacation.
yeah, that's
Right?
that's where you're starting with.
As we start in it, 2 weeks. Teachers get 3 weeks in December, 2 weeks in Easter, and 2 months in April. They're gonna come and say, "Oh well, we could get called out to a workshop." Oh my God, the horror! A workshop. Oh no, how no? My whole life has been inconvenience or workshop. But these are just one of the perks, and there are many teachers who take the job because of the vacation. And anyone saying no is full of crap.
Yeah, Wally Russell, we had a scrounge up with 14 days. They getting like 3 months paid vacation. I find that rather unfair.
Teachers complain about having to work in the night, but understand they go home 2 o'clock.
Yeah,
Technically, they're eight, technically they're 8 to 4. They're supposed to be working from 8 to 4, but they're allowed to go home too. And in my case, I've seen it when I was a student, they're allowed to go home 11, 12, whatever time your last class of the day is. But things like having to correct papers in the night, these aren't things that are out of the ordinary for the average worker. The average worker may have to go home. Just last week, I had to go home and take home some work to finish. These things aren't out of the ordinary, and I can't understand. And this is the question I have for many teachers. You took a job knowing the conditions. Why are you complaining? Isn't the
be-
simple solution to simply leave the job?
because complaining is fun. Because complacency is the Trinidadian way. Honest to God.
And that is why I have said teachers are no longer teachers. It's not a prestigious job anymore. I think a lot of people simply want to think of themselves as prestigious because they're teachers. But I said it last week I said it. I said they're nothing more than glorified civil servants. That is
Yeah,
what they become.
you said it correct. And you had brought up another interesting point is that salary increases are usually based on performance. So what we should be seeing is smarter students, higher pass rates, and better
Right.
schools.
But we're
But
not seeing that. And
we're
even if
not
it
seeing
is,
that at all.
the thing is, they're saying more money would fix these things. And I'm like, how is more money going to fix the fact that children are fighting in school? Okay, yes, you have to put up with children fighting in school, but how is more money going to fix that? As a matter of fact, the teacher who should get the highest salary is the one who was able to fix fighting in schools and turn these children into academic successes. And I said some last week when it happened. I said the denominational school teachers are the ones who are going to come out, and the government service are going to stay home. The government school teachers are the ones who are going to stay home. And so said, so done. So it is proof. I mean, I think it was like 30% turnout at the denominational schools, which was alarmingly low. But then again, the denominational schools are very much losing their prestige. But that's a topic for another time.
Mhm.
But the fact is, the statistics showed what predicted. I said that the government school teachers are the one doing the most complaining, and yet they are the ones that have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, no kind of progress, no kind of higher pass rates. Now, I could understand a little bit because of the COVID situation and people having
Right.
to keep their children home and all of that. So they already passed mark. But prior to that, we should have been seeing a steady climb in the passing rates and the A's and the B's, but we're
I mean,
not seeing that.
I will be fair at the same time. Yes, government school, trying to go to government schools, what we used to call long time junior sec, come from ill-disciplined homes. I mean, the fact that they passed one of these schools means that they didn't have a good academic foundation, right? They're not the quote unquote bright children of the nation. All that is understood. So when you, as a teacher, get placed into one of these schools, you know what you're dealing with up front. It should not come as a surprise. But we have now found ourselves in a situation, with all that being said, where we have schools like St. Mary's College, Queen's Royal College, can't even get one scholarship. And that is why I say the teaching service is no longer what it once was, because you have taken schools that were known for academic success and you've put teachers in there who clearly cannot match the performance of years prior. And the thing is, schools were doing much better 20, 30 years ago when teachers were making less money. How are you supposed to convince me that more money is going to solve this problem?
Yeah, that's what everybody like to think. You need to throw more money at the
That's a
problem.
problem. Yeah.
With crime, you need to have more police. So what, you go hire one police for every person in the country? Come now, man. These things don't work. People don't think with sense.
No.
They just say, yeah, we pay the teachers more, and guess what? The results being the same. Is a degradation in the education
I,
system.
I saw a status from a teacher who said, and this is another trope of trade unions. Trade unions seem to think that they not only bargain in their members' interest but national interest, which is funny because all employees in a nation are not the same across the board. They don't perform the same job, they don't perform the same role, they don't have the same skills, etc., etc.
Correct is right.
But a teacher said that we're doing this for the country because if we get our salary increase, the whole country will benefit because the whole country will get salary increases. And I'm like, what?
That just the work. It's like you have a cake. The teacher's getting a slice of the cake. If the teacher want more of the cake, that means less for everybody. The cake not going to suddenly rebake itself bigger. It's the
Correct.
same cake.
And then one had the audacity to actually say they are doing this for the sake of the children. And I cannot think of an uglier display of narcissism that than to hold the children of the nation hostage, not teach them for a day, and somehow make yourself the hero in all of this. They can't be an uglier display of narcissism than that. Well, if this is
Well,
about the children, if this is about the children, you want better for the children, then you should have come out to school and teach them on the first day.
I agree. But Jacques Claude, they didn't specify which children. It could be their
Well,
own children they're talking
it
about.
could be their own children. You know, that's true. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so what is the purpose of the trade union? Because in Trinidad, that's all the trade unions do. Yeah, you have credit unions that these trade unions have, but ultimately they don't seek the benefit of their workers.
You know,
If a teacher end up in a fight or injured, does the trade union sponsor their medical bills?
that's a good question.
Now, we may not have the
Because
answer today. Maybe somebody in the audience could comment on the video and let us know. But from our perspective, we can't really see anything other than asking for
and it's
more
not
money
and it's not just that. The trade union must know the teachers who not performing. But yet you want salary increases for them at the expense of those who performing.
for everybody. That's the next thing. So the teachers that performing good and the teachers not performing good, both of them getting salary increase. So where's your incentive to actually perform good?
Now we've seen the success of Cuba Secondary in recent times. A school that once started off as a quote unquote junior sec, a school where children who weren't intelligent went. And through the work of Vernon Ramasa there, that school became a prominent school over time, to the point where some people, if they're living in Cuba, they put it as a child's first choice. So it can be done. I don't. Regardless of what anyone says about, the children just wayward and whatever. The fact is, it can be done. So I think it's time to start holding government school teachers accountable. It's time to start asking them, well, what are you doing? And then in the case of the denominational schools now, where we've seen this significant decline in performance, it's time to start holding those teachers accountable. The school I went to, quote unquote prestige school 10 years ago, students were struggling with communication studies for CAPE. And I'm talking about otherwise intelligent children. And for some reason, we just weren't getting higher than grade 2 in CAPE. Who do we hold accountable for that? I'm getting ones in everything else. This subject I'm getting a 2 in. It can't be that communication studies was so hard because, that same year, Lakshmi Girls get about 38 open scholarships.
It had to be either the students just will get communication studies or the teacher.
It has to be. And it's time we start holding them accountable. But what the teachers union does is that it rewards these incompetent teachers. It allows them to stay under the radar because they're not being held accountable. If anything, they'll make an excuse. Oh, well, the teacher couldn't teach the students properly because one light out of 6 in the classroom wasn't working for the year. Oh, she couldn't teach the students properly because she had to use her own internet at home and they didn't provide internet for her. There's always going to be some ridiculous excuse because the teachers' union's sole role is to ensure that incompetent teachers stay under the radar, they
Are
stay employed,
protected.
and it makes being an incompetent teacher a lucrative career. That is the point we've
Yes,
reached.
yes, and I think we have seen that plenty because all of us would have gone to school at some point in time, and we know that some teachers cared and some teachers didn't care, and the ones that don't care are the ones you need to get out of the system, but the union protects them.
And it's not just that, too. I've had teachers I've had to question, how did you even pass this subject as a student? I will say it here, I've had teachers who I do not think if they were to write the CXC or K paper, they'll do any better than me. And
Hey, but
I've had teachers, the teachers who stayed home, sorry, not stayed home, the teachers who actually went out to school and teach, who actually confessed to me that they are teachers that if they write the K paper, they leave him with a 3.
yeah,
Not even with a
I
1.
I do doubt that at
Because
all.
that's what this is a stop. It's gonna vary a bit here, but that's what mandatory education has also done. If you're gonna build 100 schools, you're gonna have to find at least 100 teachers.
Hmm.
You're gonna lower the bar, you're gonna lower the entrance requirement to become a teacher.
And not just not working out for anybody, not working out for the
Correct.
taxpayer, not working out for the student.
So that's what the teachers union also did. To increase his bargaining power, like I said, it lowers the entrance requirements to get in.
Yeah.
And that is the point in education no one wants to talk about as well. The fact is we have teachers who are not up to scratch themselves. They are no better off than the students when it comes to the subjects they're teaching. They're not in a position to educate anyone. But
Yeah.
I don't, we didn't reach this point like that. These are the results, these are the consequences of policies and education that people voted for.
Yeah, it's a product essentially of the teachers' unions and the protection of government civil workers. So they came out of the private system. You're getting a guaranteed salary. So of course you're gonna get bad apples flocking to these
Yep.
positions. given the bare minimum or nothing at all. And yeah, the education just getting worse and worse.
I mean, I think, was it this year or last year? I mean, how much of it we can attribute to COVID, I really don't know. But the results have been trending downwards for at least the last 10 years. When I wrote CXC, which was back in 2012, I think the pass rate for mathematics my year was like 48% or something like
Oh
that.
my word.
But now that it's reached 30 something, 20 something percent, it's just a continuation of a trend that from when I left school 10 years ago.
And you'd think this would be blinking red warning signs to the people and them in the teachers' unions, but
Well,
they're not doing anything.
you think it would be blinking red warning signs to the teachers themselves, but they still walk around with their God complex. Some of them have the audacity to call themselves educators. And some of them think that they hold the future of this nation in their hand. And I don't think they understand the seriousness of that statement they're making. I'm responsible for the future. Yes, you are. So when the future is walking around here without a basic understanding of math and English, then you have to be held accountable for that.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, even when I was growing up, Jean-Claude, I always thought, all right, so I'm going from one level of school to the next. They're going to help me broaden my thinking and help me think better, and I would really get to advance myself. But honest to goodness, from primary school to secondary school to tertiary education, it was all the same. I only got teachers who had a textbook. You learn what is in the curriculum. You hope that what you learn in the curriculum come for the exam, and it's either you pass the exam or not. No, hardly ever was my thinking broadened. I had to go and read by myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think unless you have that natural um inquisitiveness in you,
A drive,
that drive,
a desire to learn.
you're just another robot coming off an assembly line.
100%. And that's the thing, and that's the next thing. A teacher is supposed to encourage your drive to learn. But what I find is, yeah, they're just happy to get a salary and
Oh,
to talk about what in the book and say, hey, this coming for exam. Good luck.
yeah.
Ah, boy. So the next topic I want to cover is salaries. So, all right, tutors say they need an increase in salary. Where's that money gonna come from?
Well, it's going to have to come from the treasury. As
And
well.
where does the treasury get money from?
It comes from taxpayers. It comes from international trade. It comes from foreign loans. It comes from all over.
I
That's where
think
it comes from. And teachers cannot be the ones to complain about having to face bad roads in the morning because the money that was used that could have been used to fix roads went to your pockets.
that's a whole other topic by itself.
No, that's what I'm saying. The money has to. Where does the money come from? The money comes from where it's currently going elsewhere. So it's gonna have to be redirected to teachers' pockets.
And here's the part that I really want people to understand the whole economics on it, and that's really why I appreciated you coming on the show. Is you have to understand that everybody in Trinidad who working and paying taxes, that tax money is what funding the government and funding the government workers. Now, for an economy to grow and for a country to have a healthy trade balance, you have to produce and sell more than you spend. And for Trinidad, I think almost more than 40% of the people working in Trinidad work for the government.
So,
And
yes,
the
that is.
government does not produce a product or a service that turns a profit.
Mhm.
And if the government is not producing a profit, that means the tax burden, the burden to spend and pay for salaries, comes onto the productive people who do create products and services that are of value.
Yeah, I mean, we have found ourselves in a situation where the state has become not the major employer, but it's almost neck and neck with the private sector. It's almost 50-50. So we have a situation where now when economists use the term GDP, what they're referring to is basically output. They're referring to the production of the total production of goods within an economy, of which 60% of the labor force is responsible for. And this is not to pick on government workers. This is not to belittle them or anything. But we have to understand certain realities here. If you're an employee at let's say the Ministry of Arts and Multiculturalism, okay, Carifesta, all these other events that they put on, they're not revenue earners. Typical Jazz Festival, these aren't revenue earners. They're
Carnival is not a revenue earner.
Carnival is not a revenue earner. Exactly. You are therefore, your salary therefore has to be drawn from somewhere else. Okay? It has to be drawn, we talk about taxpayers, citizens as taxpayers as the source of funds. Who we're really forgetting here is the corporate taxpayers, the companies that are actually producing, the businesses that are actually producing. Businessmen have to cut their revenues by 25%, 35%, and give it to the government so that the government can use this money to pay public servants because they're not bringing in revenue. Okay, that's a major thing we have to think about. And remember, we have only 60% of the workforce producing goods in this country. I'm sure you might want to use the argument, oh, well, there's national flour mills. Yeah, but you have to remember there's also country pride. And national flour mills has way more overheads. I think it was did they record like $2 or $3 million losses or some figure like that the other day? And these are the things we have to consider. We have to consider that we have a very, very large state enterprise body. And teachers, while yes, teachers are making an invaluable contribution to society, they are technically educators. At the end of the day, you still have to make money to get paid. So teachers need to understand they fall into that category of public servant, whether or not they like it, whether or not they like it. It is the reality. And the question of where the money is going to come from, that is something that teachers have not thought about. Much like OWT hasn't thought about, much like the seaman workers trade union, they haven't thought about it. It's the one question nobody wants to answer because it's the one question nobody can't answer because at the end of the day, they all know it has to come from somewhere. But we've reached the point where everyone thinks they're entitled to a larger piece of the national pie than the next person. And that is the nation we have simply become.
Yeah, I agree with all of what you're saying. And for people who have been listening so far, it really sounded like we bashing teachers and we don't respect the profession, but that is not the case. Teachers are
It's
very
not bashing
important.
it.
Teachers are
It's
very
just the
important.
reality. It's just the reality of the circumstances. We would all like money. We would all like more money. Just recently I went to my boss and asked for a salary increase, and well, I got the private sector answer. He said, well, I can't give you an increase based on what you think you deserve. I can't give you an increase based on what you think you are worth. Your pay is tied to my company. Now, uh, in any private company, a company that makes $1 million a year cannot pay the same wages as a company that makes $2 million a year. But it goes back to my point about public servants living in this bubble that there is such a thing called a standardized wage rate across the world. And it's simply not the case. And I always say one of the things unions do is misinform people on how economics works. Because no employer, believe it or not, no employer wants to underpay a worker. No employer. Why would an employer pay a dollar? Let's just use simple numbers here. $1 a day to a worker when there's a next employer willing to pay $2. He'll eventually lose that worker. No employer wants to do it. But at the end of the day, everyone is constrained by a budget, and we've reached the point in society where these just aren't things people consider. The idea that we're constrained, that there's a budget, even though we have a national budget every year. I don't mean to go off on our next topic here, but it will all come together. We have a national budget every year, but what's the one
Hmm.
analysis you hear over and over? Oh, they could have spent more here. They could have. It's called a budget for a reason.
Yeah,
If it was simple to just spend more elsewhere, then there wouldn't be a need for a budget.
yeah, there's
But
a limited amount of funding.
that's what teachers don't understand. Y'all are also working on a budget.
Yeah, so some good points there, some good points there. I want to say that, yeah, essentially that If we were to have an audit of teachers and we were to establish who are the good teachers from the bad teachers and we raise the salary of the good teachers, I don't think anybody would fuss. But the
I
fact
don't think
of
so either.
how a trade union works is that everybody across the
Across the
board
board. It cannot be
getting
across the board.
getting a salary increase, and that is not fair. The cost of
Can't be.
living raising on everybody, yes, but when you want to reward people, you have to reward the good workers, and you don't want to reward the bad workers.
I'm glad you bring up that point because I have a friend who said the same thing. He's like, how are we supposed to sympathize with teachers here? What is the argument? The cost of living going up, well, it's going up for all of us too.
Correct
But
is right.
we're not getting salary increases. We just learning to deal with it and live with it.
And if teachers get a salary increases and how they say, oh, we're doing this for everybody, and everybody get a salary increase, get what? Is inflation now. Now the price
Incorrect.
of everything raising.
Yep.
Completely counterintuitive. And the situation we're facing now after COVID, country was in lockdown for 2 years. The
No
government,
productivity.
no productivity. The government was forced it on businesses to close up shop. So guess
Yep.
what? Tax revenue has decreased, not
Yeah.
increased.
Mm-hmm.
So you have less production, you have less businesses, you have
Mm-hmm.
less tax revenue. Again, where the money coming from? We have to go and borrow from IMF or China
Just to pay teachers.
just to pay teachers salary increase. Come now, man. Now, you and I, we both respect teachers. Teachers more or less guided us through our lives. We are who we are because of the teachers we had. That don't mean all of them were good. You learn from the good and you learn from the bad. From
But
the
yeah,
bad,
I'm also who I am because of the bad ones.
you learn what not to do from the bad. And that's just a part of life.
Yeah.
So we're not here to bash
But
teachers, even
I'm
though
glad
this episode was a bit more negative in when it comes to that light.
Well, you see, it's easy to paint reality in a negative light. It's very easy to do that. When people talk reality means talking things people it means saying things people don't want to hear. So it's
Correct.
very easy to paint it in a negative light. But I'm glad they brought up the inflationary effect that this could have as well, because I keep telling people over and over, every time trade unions negotiate and get more money for their workers, are you putting more groceries in your cart?
No, it's the same groceries or less.
Even more. The only thing that going up is the grocery bill. You not get, and that's just a basic economic concept. If everybody could afford something, shortages will incur. We'll all just
Correct.
rush and buy it. Therefore, groceries have to raise their prices to prevent people from buying out everything. And no one thinks about that. If we could all afford everything in the grocery shelf, there'll be nothing on the grocery shelf.
And here's the challenge for the teachers and them in secondary school. I didn't do POA or POB, but at no point was inflation ever taught to me. So I want teachers to go out Monday morning, teach a class about inflation, and then
Well,
justify the salary increase.
I was saying I could understand the history teacher of staying home protesting. I could understand the science teacher. But I hope to God that I have no economics teacher talking this right now.
That is a good point.
But this is the reality of many of our economic experts. Either it's always either they are misinformed or they simply parody narratives that will make them popular.
Yeah, they say it was popular because they want to be part of the crew. That the whole union aspect of it, and that's a sad thing because if you don't, if you're always going with what the group wants, you're going to neglect the individual. And what
I,
we promoting here is the empowerment of the individual teacher who does a good job and deserves a salary increase.
but many of those individual teachers are able to go and start their own private schools after because their talent comes from within, not a collective bargaining.
Yeah, and that's actually what you're seeing now in the modern world, even in America, that charter schools now are what parents want. Parents want to get their children out of the government school into the charter school because you're
But
getting a quality service in
I
the
don't
charter school.
I don't think we're at that level in Trinidad yet. I don't think the discourse has reached that point yet where we either we just don't know what's taking place outside of the two by two bubble, but the public school system in we'll use the United States or any part of the world, but we'll go to the United States because they brought up charter schools. In many parts of the world, a lot of parents have a problem with public schools. It was just recently in Seattle, the teachers union made the teachers stay home as well because they were demanding better salaries and better working conditions. This is an international thing, and it all comes back to the root of it all is public education. But I don't think we've reached that point in Trinidad. I don't think there are parents in Trinidad yet who are willing to say, you know what, I'm going to take my child out of public school. I'm going to make the sacrifice, try private school. I don't think there are teachers who are, even if their heart is into teaching, I don't think there are teachers who are willing to take that risk and say, I'm going to create my own school. And I think that's what needs to happen in Trinidad and Tobago for public school education system to fix it. It needs a shake up. If the aren't parents sending their children to it, then half these teachers will be out of a job. And I
Yeah,
don't think that reality has dawned. I heard one teacher say, "Oh well, we're not your child's babysitter." Yeah, but if I don't send my child, they have no job.
correct.
But
Correct is right.
I don't think parents have reached that point where Americans have reached where they're fighting to get their children in charter schools, where they're fighting to maintain the existence of charter schools. In this country, we are willing to give up the denominational schools, the one and only good thing about our education system. But even that is falling apart. But it's the one and only good thing. But you have parents who are willing to say let's scrap the Concordat altogether.
Yeah,
I
and
don't.
is we kind of had the charter school system back when you had the privately funded schools, but again, it's because teachers say, "Hey, we want that guaranteed salary."
Salary, yes.
That they allow those schools to be absorbed by the government public education system. And guess what? Everything the government touches, from HDC to this new road building program they're talking about to education, it makes it worse.
I think I think what we need is a shake up, and that shake up has to come from the parents. Parents have to be able to. Well, the COVID actually, a teacher friend of mine was telling me that because he teaches at a government school. Shout out to him. You know who he is. He went to school Monday. Um, he was telling me that a lot of students came to public school because their private schools closed down because of COVID.
Yes, yes,
The
that's
school closed
another
down.
thing we have to think about.
So, we're giving more power to public schools, we're giving more power to tutor, and we're giving more power to the incompetent teachers.
And then we
It's
have
a,
to be happy with the results. And the results are not good. The
and they-
results not good at this point at all.
and I think it's time that parents get even more involved in their children education to the point where you have to start wondering what's taking place at the school your child going to, and what public school needs is competition because they monopolize education. But I think within recent times I have seen some private secondary schools popping up out of nowhere. I think it is going to come because there's only so much parents can take. As I was saying, what is a parent is supposed to sympathize with here? Imagine teachers were off in July and August getting their salary. They were getting their salary throughout COVID. They already
Yeah,
did. They already did so much. Parents had to put up with so much nonsense from Twitter during COVID. Just think back to Operation Blackout. I work hard as a parent in July and August to get my child ready for school while you were vacationing, and then you stay home the first day. They're going to eventually turn their own customers away. It's going to reach a point where, as long as competition creates cheaper alternatives, and as long as more private schools start popping up and offering lower prices for tuition, I think, at least I could hope, a lot of public schools will just cease to exist, and a lot of these incompetent teachers will be out of a job. And I know that's a harsh statement to make, but I think there's a smugness that a lot of these teachers have to them that just needs to be wiped off their face.
yeah, and I think that is the big takeaway from today's episode is that if you want to solve the education problem, you have to privatize. And that is the solution for almost everything that we have as a problem in Trinidad and Tobago. HTC needs to be abolished, housing should be privatized. The medical system, government sponsored medical system needs to be abolished.
Transportation.
Medical system needs to be privatized, but all of these are separate conversations
Yeah,
for another
I
day.
think, how do we fix education going forward with what we have? It's time for we're auditing the wrong things in education. We're auditing teachers' salary, which is far better than the average citizen in this country. The average citizen, there are people in this country that work for $3,500, $4,000 a month,
And that is the out of school salary. And
right?
how these people supposed to rent? How they supposed to get a loan? They can't do nothing with that salary, but a teacher, they earning three times that.
Exactly. And I think the audit we need an audit into teacher competency. But as
Yeah.
long as we have the teachers union fighting to maintain the incompetent ones, then it's a losing battle.
And you could only do that through a private school because a private school will pull up a bad teacher and say, hey, fix this or you're gone.
If not the principal, at least the parents.
Correct is right.
It's time for parents to have I mean, parents who send their children to denominational schools, obviously they've shown a great interest in their children's education. That's why they're there. But what the private school offers that not even a denominational school offer is greater communication with teachers. It offers a greater involvement in the sense that, okay, you can go to private school A, and if you don't like the curriculum, you can check out private school B. If you don't like it, check out private school C. You're not going to get that with public education. You're going to get one curriculum across the board for every child.
Yeah, and the shoe does not fit for every child. The
Right.
standardization of education, it has failed many children, especially boys.
Yeah. And I hear people say we need mixed capabilities classes. But we already have that in our education system. That's what our education currently is. It's mixed capabilities. You take children of different backgrounds, of different academic strengths, and you throw them into a class, and we see the results that we get. So it's time to audit the right things, and we need to audit competency. We have reported the lowest SCA result in public history. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous how many students scored less than 50%.
Yeah,
These are the audits we did over the July August, not salaries.
correct. And we need to turn the ship around because the government driven education system is not working. It failing the students. Teachers happy as I don't know who. They get a whole year off and is it just salary and doing nothing, staying home, quarreling with people who wanted to go back out to work during COVID. But so it is. So our message today is private schools introduce competition and school choice, and you go see how quickly the education system go fix.
Mhm. And above all, abolish the teachers union.
That one might take a little bit longer, I think. All right, Jean-Claude, thank you so much for your time today. I open up the floor for you now to let everybody know what's going on with you, and maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the books you've written.
Oh, thanks again for having me. And I really appreciate this opportunity. As was gonna me, I have a couple more projects in the works, but right now my two current books that are out, from indenticeship to entrepreneurship, which is it's basically a counter narrative to the established narrative in the country that the success of Indians today is, can be attributed to the indenticeship program, which paid them wages and, of course, gave them land. And, it's such a bogus narrative that, I mean, if you look at the data empirically, it does not hold up. For instance, the whole argument that Indians were given land, well, of the 144,000 that arrived, only 2,000 got land. Most of that land wasn't even good. They had to end up just abandoning it altogether. It couldn't cultivate crops or anything. It couldn't even build a house properly on it without it collapsing. So, the data, it just doesn't hold up. So that book is one of I enjoyed writing that book a lot. I had so much fun with it. The reviews on it, you can check out Kevin Baldiosing's review on it. It's available at RIK Book Services, Scribbles and Quills and Sugarness, and Metropolitan Bookstore, as well as the Book Emporium. And I mean, I had a lot of fun writing that book, and I hope it really challenges that narrative that, even at UE, that still gets parroted. And my other book is What's on My Mind, which is basically a compilation of essays on economic issues, political issues, race relations, education. I have a fantastic one about Twitter about in that book. It's called No Future with Twitter, and I was actually rereading it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's called No Future with Twitter, and I was actually rereading it in preparation for this today. And I said, my God, all I have to do is just change the date on this. It's the exact same thing. So yeah, that book is also available at that's available at Metropolitan Bookstore. Of course, you could always contact me as well personally if you want to get a book from me. My contact number is 323-4406. It's also available on Amazon if you're outside of Trinidad. So yeah, that's the books I've written so far, and I also have a couple more in the works, and it's just a matter of time. And I love writing. I love speaking on issues. I do this because this is pure passion for me. This is, I'm not a writer full time, but I do it because I've always said sometimes you just have to do things because no one else is doing it. And in my case, I felt like no one else was really, in the first book, no one else was really challenging that narrative. And in my second book, there's just a gap. But there's really no space for conservative thinking in Trinidad. It's very all new. The pro-capitalist ideas that I have, the pro-free market leanings. These are all new topics. I mean, Dr. Morgan Job tried however many decades ago, but Trinidadians weren't ready then for capitalist policies. I think we've had enough failures since then with socialist policies for Trinidadians to be a bit more open and understanding. Like I said, it very much reflects in, you see all these private institutions popping up, whether it's medical care or education. I think the tides are shifting, and I think, God bless his soul and may he rest in peace, Morgan Job. But I think, he laid a good foundation, and I think, people like me, people like you, anybody else, 868 Media, is that what he calls his name?
Yeah, I
Dr.
think
Paul?
it's 868 Media.
Media, yeah. I think there's a lot of space for us now. Our writings could resonate more with people now that, we've seen the failures of, pursuing more socialist policies over the last few years.
All right, thanks so much for sharing everything today. I'll include links to his two books down in the description below, how you could contact him. And I wish everyone a blessed day further. Thank you, Jean-Claude.
All right, thank you, and thanks everyone for listening.